everyone.
I'm Nader.
And I'm Julie. We're the co-presidents of the UALC. This is the official UALC podcast where we talk about law school, the LSAT, and legal field.
Episodes go up every second Wednesday featuring law students, lawyers, professors, and so on. Thanks for listening.
Welcome, everyone. Today we're here with Jessica Gill, a 3L at the University of Alberta. We're going to ask her a couple of questions and kind of just talk about her experience getting into law school, during law school, as well as articling outside of Alberta and her experience at the UofA. So maybe to kick off the podcast, if you can just tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey leading up to law school and why you choose to pursue a career in law and the area you're thinking of practicing in after graduation.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for inviting me today. It's such an honor to be here. So my career in school started off in psychology. I honestly didn't know what I wanted to do when I was in first year. I was really stressed out because I felt like everyone else knew what they wanted to do, and I was the only person that had no idea what I wanted to do at all. So I actually was just like in arts, undeclared major, undeclared minor, and then as things went along, I just decided that psychology was the best thing for me at the moment. So that's what I did. And then somewhere along like third year, I think, I started looking at my grades and I was like, well, they're actually pretty decent. Like maybe I should do some school after undergrad and start like looking at my options. And so I was thinking about doing psychology counseling or pursuing a master's. However, I was doing some research and it honestly didn't really suit me, I thought. So I was looking at other options and law crossed my mind. And so I took like a business law course through the Faculty of Business, and I really liked it. And the professor was the coolest dude I've ever met. Like he was like Harvey Specter vibes. And it really like drew me into that. So then I decided to look into it more. I shadowed a lawyer that I know here in Edmonton, and I really liked what he was doing as well. So then, yeah, I just decided to do the LSAT. Took me a lot of time to get that sorted out. But yeah, then I applied to a few law schools, got into a couple, and ultimately decided to go to U of A because I'm from Edmonton and my family's here. And during COVID, it was, obviously scary. So I wanted to be closer to home. Otherwise, I definitely would have gone somewhere else for law school. So yeah, it's been great. And I plan to do labor, employment, human rights. I also had no idea what I wanted to do going into law school as well. I feel like a big part of my thinking was just getting into law school. I feel like that was the biggest hurdle for me. And so once I was in, it was really hard to like figure out what I wanted to do after that. And so this has kind of just like been something that I really am passionate about. And so I'm looking to do some, especially human rights work in my future.
That's awesome that you're looking to do human rights and employment law, I believe you said?
Yeah.
That's awesome. So I guess what are some pieces of advice that you have for any undergraduate students looking to pursue a career in law? Like, are there any essential qualities that you would suggest for someone to develop in undergrad or to help them just navigate law school and the legal system?
Yeah, for sure. Honestly, I think the biggest thing, if you do want to go to law school, I think you really need to, take a long, hard look in the mirror and decide if this is what you really want to do, because it is a long journey and it's a lot of work, especially to get in. I, definitely had rough days and hard months where if I didn't have a good reason for wanting to go to law school, it would not have been worth it. And so I think having, some kind of mindset of what you want to do for like the greater good to become a lawyer, I think that's really important because that will definitely get you through the hard moments in life that you will definitely experience when you are pursuing a career in law. Also, I would say to shadow lawyers. I think that was like the best thing that I did because coming out of undergrad, you don't really know what a lawyer does at all. And so being able to shadow someone and to talk to people who have been practicing for a few years is really, really beneficial. And they will give you, the hard truth about what it's like and will tell you the realities of what it is like to be a lawyer. So I think that was very helpful as well. In terms of essential qualities, I would say hard work is definitely the biggest thing. And learning how to study in undergrad is really important because yeah, it's definitely important to getting into law school and also doing well when you're in law school. But the studying that you do in law school is completely different than what you do in undergrad. So it is good to have those kind of soft skills that are really transferable because you're going to have to adapt right away as soon as you get into law school. You know, all your exams are open book. And so it's a lot different than just like memorizing stuff in undergrad, which was what I tended to do. So yeah, that's definitely important as well. And also learning how to network. I think that no one really stressed that enough for me when I was an undergrad because I did psychology. That's not really something that comes up. I know a lot of business people are very um, fluent in that area, but that was something I never learned. And it was really, really important to getting an articling position was learning how to network and, you know, talking to people and having conversations. And that was just something that I had to learn when in law school. And I think that would have been beneficial to learn beforehand because there is a lot of opportunities to do networking when you're in undergrad. So I think that is also really important. And being a people person, I think is honestly important in law school, and it will get you further than not being a people person.
Like you mentioned, the jump from studying in undergrad to law school was so different, as well the social aspect increases a lot. What are like some strategies that you put into place to avoid burning out in law school, or once, or if you do feel burnout, like how do you deal with that?
Yeah, definitely experienced burnout, and I think I didn't deal with it in the best way. So I don't honestly have like great pieces of advice for that. But I think I was at a bigger disadvantage because my first year, which is the hardest year of law school, by the way, is first year, was COVID and you weren't able to do anything. So I was just trapped in, I remember the month of April, I literally didn't leave my house the entire month. I just sat at home and I studied every day. And that was obviously very unhealthy. So I think, you know, exercising is really important. Like I'm really into sports. So I think being on sports teams is really important for me. And so throughout law school, I've been playing intramurals, soccer, dodgeball, volleyball. I think that's like a really good way because you're all like de-stressing together with your peers and everyone's just like ranting about school. And it's really helpful to be in that kind of environment and just let off steam. So I think that was the biggest thing that's helped me throughout the last 2 years. And then, yeah, honestly, I think that's it. And just like being balanced. Like I think a lot of people when they get into hard programs, they just want to do school and that's it. But I think that is definitely the biggest wrong thing that you could do. Like you should definitely spend time with your family and friends and, you know, do other things and volunteer and play sports and whatever it is that makes you happy. I think those things shouldn't go away. So that's definitely something I learned as well, especially in undergrad. I did that to myself then too. So yeah, I think that's really important. And a lot of people say, I guess like in the US, that like law school should be like a 9 to 5 kind of thing. I definitely don't think that's true in first year. Like, no way could you do like a 9 to 5 thing. But I do know a lot of people who have done that and have actually succeeded. So honestly, I think everyone's different. And I know a lot of people in law school have like kids and have families and are like juggling all of that. And I'm just out here living with my parents, you know, so I just like don't have as much responsibility. So I think that I tend to spend more time on school than my peers did, but that's just because I had that luxury.
Yeah, there's definitely a diversity of experiences in law school, and everyone's experience is kind of unique in that sense. But what would you say that maybe there was something that surprised you about law school?
Yeah, the biggest surprises, I guess, I've seen in law school in first year was just like the amount of reading that you had to do. Given my undergrad in psychology, I was used to doing readings, but I know a lot of people coming from business backgrounds or sciences, engineering, they're definitely not used to doing that stuff. So I thought I was in a better place, like to be prepared to do that. But it was quite challenging to do all the readings and to like prioritize which ones you needed to do. So that was like the biggest shock for me. And then non-academically, the biggest shock is the social aspects of law school. It is crazy. Like it's literally high school all over again. Everyone's really, really close, but like a little too close sometimes. Like there's a lot of drama. There's a lot of social events too. Like literally every week, I feel like there's something happening. So that was really cool. I wasn't really expecting that. Like I didn't expect to make such good friends as well. I just thought, you know, it would be a little bit like undergrad or made a few friends, but nothing crazy. But yeah, in law school, you have your classes with, all the same people. And so you're seeing people quite frequently. You're going to all these events together and just bonding so much, which is amazing because these are going to be your future colleagues. So I think that was definitely a big surprise to me. And then also academically, again, I think just like how different it was to study. I had heard people who were in years ahead of me say that it is really difficult to learn how to study in law school. So I like before law school started, I watched some YouTube videos on like how to do a law exam or like how to study for law school. And I think that really helped. So I was a little bit more prepared for that going into it, but still, once you start, it's just like really hard to kind of figure that out and navigate that while also trying to keep up with the readings and go to classes and stuff like that. So first year was really, really difficult, if I'm being completely honest. But then second and third year is pretty chill, not gonna lie. So I think that was also a surprise, was just like how much less work second and third year are compared to your first year.
That's interesting. Yeah, I wonder if like did you find that your second and third year were like easier just because you got more like used to the flow, or did you find that the content was a little easier to deal with?
I think it was a little bit of both. Like you definitely know how to read a case, which is a big deal, and to do case briefs and to make your notes and stuff like that. So I think that's a little bit why. And you're also choosing your classes in second and third year. So if you're taking more interesting classes towards you, you're definitely going to do better and you're going to find it easier as well. And then in first year, you have to take like mandatory 6 courses. And they're at the end, like you have 5 finals. For midterms and finals in April. And so that was a lot of work doing 5 finals. And like I'm an exam person, but that was really overwhelming for me. So I think when you get to pick your schedule, you can either take like a paper class or a final exam class. And so you can really like balance that out. So you can do your papers, like a month or two ahead of time, and then just focus on your exams when it comes time to exam week. So that is definitely why I find it a lot easier, because you can choose how you spread out your work and what you want to do for your classes. So that's definitely
Mm, interesting. And then did you work during like your 1L and your 2L summers? And like if so, what did you do and where did you work?
Yeah, so in my 1L summer, I worked at the Alberta legislature just because I wanted to work in Vancouver. I had always known that that's where I wanted to end up. And so how the Vancouver recruit works is it's in your second year, not in your first year. The first year is only geared towards like Calgary and Edmonton more so. So I didn't apply for that. I just wanted to work somewhere like non-law related because it would probably be the last time I'd ever do that in my entire life. And so I had saw this like amazing opportunity, which an MLA had shared on their LinkedIn, I think it was. And yeah, I applied and it was honestly amazing experience. I was doing somewhat law related stuff, just because that's, what I was geared towards doing. But it was also like writing a lot of speeches for MLAs, like doing a lot of research for bills, for private member bills or government bills, working with like different people in caucus and as well as in the government. So that was really cool. I did a lot of research. I also did a lot of ethnic media, which is something that I was interested in helping out with. So that was really cool. I would definitely recommend, if you wanted to, work in Vancouver or Toronto, to do something non-law related in your first summer, because people just like when you're doing interviews, they just want something interesting to talk about. And I think having some like random experience was definitely beneficial for me. Also, when I was in undergrad, I worked at Suncor in the refinery, and it seemed like every single person who I interviewed with, I'm not even joking, I had 18 OCIs, and every single person asked me about Suncor. And not a lot of people even asked me about the legislator, because that's just like so common to see those kind of type of roles on law students cover letters and resumes, versus like something like working in a refinery you don't see very often. So one of the biggest pieces of advice someone gave me, which was super helpful, was like to do just something interesting and something random that like people want to talk about. And that definitely played to my advantage in interviews. And then in my second summer, I worked at Faskin in Vancouver. Through the recruit, I got that position in 2L. And yeah, it was an amazing experience. I really liked the firm. Going back to article there this year, so I'm looking forward to that. And yeah, in that role, it was just a lot of legal research and writing, helping partners with what they needed. And that's kind of where I figured out more so that I wanted to do employment law and human rights. So that was awesome. And I met a lot of amazing people there. The summer students that I worked with were all like the best people I've ever met. So I'm super excited to go back there.
That's awesome to hear that you found what you're passionate about. But how did you, I guess, navigate the recruit and end up in Vancouver essentially over Edmonton or Calgary? And did you have to find opportunities yourself, or were there opportunities through the U of A that you could access?
Yeah, so how it works is in 1L, so right now actually the recruit is happening for Calgary and Edmonton, I believe, and I think some Toronto firms do it as well. So that is done kind of through school, I would say, because your OCI schedule, which is like your first initial interview, is um, usually the career services will give you your schedule and stuff, and the firms would contact career services. At least that's how it worked when I did the recruit. And then they would give you your schedule. And then after that, for in firms, you would schedule those interviews yourself. So it was really helpful to have those. And traditionally, if I'm correct, firms would actually come to your school to do those OCIs at your school. So that was like very, very beneficial for you. But then for in firms, you would go to the firm and do their interviews there. So that was really helpful because it's a really stressful time. So having the firms come to you was definitely beneficial. And then how it worked for me, because I wanted to do Vancouver and BC in general doesn't really participate in the 1L recruit. They only do the second year recruit. So that's what I did. And it was a very long process, but U of A definitely made it easier for me because, yeah, they made my OCI schedule and everything was on Zoom that year because of COVID. So it was pretty easy, I would say, to do that. And I didn't have to look elsewhere. I just like did everything through the recruit. And so how it worked in Vancouver is they had like this portal that everyone uses, and you could see all the firms that were actually like offering a position. And then you applied directly through this portal to the firms that you wanted to. You would just send your cover letter and resume to them. And then yeah, and then you just get your interviews and go through that process. And it was pretty seamless, I would say. But it is like a long and drawn out process a little bit. And it is very stressful because Vancouver historically has been quite competitive to get a job in. And so it's important to have like good grades in first year to secure something like that. So yeah, it was really good. I didn't have to look outside. Everything was just done through the recruit process. And that made it really easy for me. And I chose Vancouver because I was born and raised in Edmonton in Alberta, and I haven't really enjoyed it too much, if I'm being completely honest, especially in recent years. And so I've always wanted to move to Vancouver. It's always been a dream of mine, and my partner lives there actually. So it works out well. Hopefully we'll settle down there and won't have to come back to Alberta too often.
That's awesome. I mean, I guess looking back on your recruit process and your journey, what was probably one of the biggest lessons that this taught you about yourself or about the world in general?
It's a good question. Um, Honestly, it's taught me a lot about myself and what I want. I've definitely changed a lot throughout law school and kind of figured out what I wanted to do. I've always kind of had this feeling of like I just don't know what I want to do and I don't know where I'm going to be in like 10 years or 5 years even. So I think yeah, I think the biggest hurdle that I said I faced was like trying to get into law school, and after what that looked like after, I had no idea what that was going to be. And so I think like discovering yourself definitely happens in law school, and you're surrounded around, super smart people. That definitely put me in my place as well because throughout undergrad, I was always getting really, really good grades. And to like be in a room full of, equally smart, if not smarter people definitely humbles you and like you learn a lot about random things, and it's just crazy to be surrounded by those kind of people all the time and just such like go-getters, and everyone's like super type A personality. And so sometimes I think it is hard to get along with everybody, but it's definitely been an experience for me. I don't regret anything either. I think I did everything in a good way and like what I wanted to do, and I really discovered myself throughout that. So that's been awesome. And the biggest thing I've learned, I guess, is that like it can be harder, I would say, for a person of color to be doing these things, like especially in a field that's been predominantly, white and male for so long. So I think that was like an eye-opening experience as well, just like how prevalent, race is these days and still is, and like how much harder it can be for someone to break the ice kind of and like get into those firms that have might not have that representation that you see. And I think that was definitely harder to do in Alberta than it is in BC. So I am kind of lucky because I never really experienced any like negativity that way. But I do have a lot of friends who have tried to do the recruit in Alberta and, had some pretty negative experiences. So I think that was really eye-opening as well.
You mentioned that you're doing your articling after you graduate in Vancouver. With that in mind, what are your thoughts on like that advice of study where you want to work that a lot of people do here? Do you think it holds true, or do you find that it's not always the case?
I find that it's not always the case, especially if you're going to law school in Canada. It's definitely, you can go wherever you want, except probably Quebec because that's a different system of law. But honestly, yeah, you could definitely go to school anywhere you want in Canada and end up articling anywhere else in Canada. Um, so yeah, it does like have its advantages, I would say, if I was going to school in BC and articling in BC, I think that would help a little bit, but it's honestly not a big difference. And you're given all the tools you need to like figure out what the differences are, and for the most part they are pretty minimal. I haven't seen anything like too crazy where it's like this is completely different in Alberta than it is in BC. It's only like just a few small things, I would say, and it is you're given the tools to figure out what that is and do the appropriate things to take that into account. So yeah, I don't really think that it's too true, but I definitely heard that advice when I was deciding on my law school as well. But yeah, don't regret anything. I'm glad that I was here for a little bit longer before I move away. Um, so yeah, I would recommend staying in Canada though if you do want to practice in Canada. I know a lot of people that are going overseas because it's quote unquote quicker to get a law degree. Maybe in Australia or in the UK or something like that. But I honestly wouldn't recommend it. I've seen a lot of people struggle when they get back and struggle to find articling, and a bunch of tests you have to go through. So I think, if you want to work in Canada, just go to school in Canada. That would be my advice. But I know it is kind of difficult to get in. So
Kind of funny because Julie and I were actually just talking about that. It's one test now, the LSAT, and then you do that, you get into law school here, or it's 5 NCA exams or something like that later on.
mm-hmm.
But how was your experience working at student legal services? Do you have any advice for any students who might want to take part in that, or any unique experiences that you have to share there?
Yeah, that was honestly a pretty crazy experience. I would say I don't work for them anymore. Not volunteering there anymore, but I did in my first year quite a bit on the family law and the criminal law projects. It was really good experience. I remember like I think it was like my third or fourth week of law school, I was already, appearing before a judge, which is crazy. I never thought that would be the case. It was just to get an adjournment, so it's nothing crazy, but it was like a really cool experience, and especially if you got to do that in person, I think that would be even better. But sadly, mine was over WebEx. Um, but it was really cool. I made a lot of friends there too. I think that was like one of the best part was just like networking, because in first year, um, it's hard to make friends and you don't know anybody, and especially like if they're not in your cohort, you don't really see them very often. So I think that was really awesome, and I was doing very, very interesting stuff, and most of it is confidential, so I can't really say what that was. But yeah, it was really, really good experience. And I wish that I did it a little bit more or stuck with that a little bit longer, but I didn't. But it did also like help me figure out if I wanted to do family law or if I wanted to do criminal law, because that's what I initially came into law school thinking that I wanted to do, was to do criminal law. And that gave me that experience and that exposure to realize that I didn't want to do it. So it was definitely very beneficial.
Like you've been saying this whole time, like experiencing things and doing them firsthand teaches you so much about where you want to go. With the power of hindsight now, would you do things differently in terms of your experience at the U of A and classes and networking opportunities? Like, do you feel like if you could go back to your day one of L1 like self and say, make sure you do this during your 3 years? Is there anything like that?
Um, Honestly, I don't think so. I would say I think I did everything that I wanted to do. I played on all the sports teams that I could and went to, all the events that I could. I think that was the biggest thing. In the first few days, people had kind of told us that law school, you'll get what you put into it. And so I had made an active effort to join like a million clubs and to go to every single event that there was and to talk to every single person that I could. So I really think I did that. And I made a lot of friends and had a lot of good memories throughout the process. So yeah, I've really enjoyed it so far. In terms of classes, I definitely took all the classes I wanted to as well, except for labor law. I never got to take that. So that would probably be my only regret, is I didn't get to take that course. And I would have like planned that differently, but I think everything worked out and I'm glad that I'm here now. I've taken some really, really interesting classes. Like for example, right now I'm working on the Innocence Project through this class called Wrongful Conviction. So I think that's like one of the coolest things I've ever done. And I've always like wanted to do something like that. So I'm still like doing the interesting stuff that I came in thinking I wanted to do, like taking wrongful convictions or law and policing, some criminal focused classes that I just find super interesting, even though I don't want to practice criminal law, and still like doing what I really, really want to do, which is like employment law and human rights. So I've taken courses like that, as well as international human rights, which I really wanted to learn more about. So it's been amazing, and I've learned more than I thought I would learn at this point. So yeah, I'm really happy with the way it worked out, and honestly, no regrets.
Yeah, that's really amazing to hear. Just your law school journey in general, your articles, and especially through your undergrad. I mean, I'm a psychology major myself, so we definitely resonated on that level. But thank you so much for joining us today and giving your insight on the law school process as a whole. And all the best in Vancouver in your articles.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and to everyone listening, this is our new series, and we will have more episodes to come. So stay tuned. Thanks for tuning in for today's episode. Thank you to Jessica for also coming on to give us such interesting stories and advice on everything. And that's all for today. So see you next time.